So today I'm really excited and honored to introduce Xinwei Zhao for her thesis defense. Xinwei joined my lab the year after I started at Drexel as a master's student who I think was studying power and started chatting with me. And after sitting in my lab and starting to do research, she eventually became a PhD student. But Xinwei is the student who has been with me since I started our lab, the Multimedia and Information Security Lab. Xinwei not only has produced a wonderful body of research, but she has contributed to the lab in so many both technical and non-technical ways. She's helped us. She's been with me and with our lab at late nights, getting code ready for software deliverables, through lab parties, she just brings such a joy and energy to the lab in addition to her many technical contributions. And I am so very proud to see Xinwei here today defending her thesis. You have done so many wonderful things during your time as a PhD student, and I am very, very excited to see what you do when you as you become Dr. Zhao, but also what you do over the course of your career, because you're capable of so many wonderful things.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very nice introduction.
Wonderful job. So Xinwei, would you like to maybe begin sharing your slides?
Yes.
For us? And, most of you have been to one of these defenses before. I believe I have the honor of chairing it, the great honor, in fact, of chairing it. Is that correct, Xinwei?
Yes.
Yes. So, Xinwei has prepared, what do you think, maybe 45, 50 minutes talk, somewhere in there? What are you targeting?
It was a 52 minutes.
Excellent. Okay, so about a 52-minute talk. And we do have the full 2 hours allocated, right? So, we can take a few questions from the audience, and then we'll ask the audience to leave the Zoom, and we'll begin the closed door session part of the exam. Best of luck, Xinwei. We know going into this what a wonderful series of work you've put together. So we're looking forward to listening to your talk.
Thank you. Thank you. So should I start?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I know it's nice to give people a few minutes, and we did see a few more people jumping on. I see Brian and Karen and a few other people, Danielle, Sarah. Welcome, everyone. But yeah, I think go ahead. It's probably a good time to get started. Please do.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my defense. So today my topic is understanding new threats against the digital forensics and computer vision. So technical advances brings a lot of convenience to our daily life. And multimedia information such as images and videos that's made very fast, and we can share images and videos using like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and etc. At the same time, the fake information also distributed very fast. So in the past, we have seen like techniques like deepfakes and GANs has been developed very rapidly. It can produce very visually plausible images and videos, and sometimes even the human eyes cannot tell them apart. So here we give two cases. The first case is in 2022. There's a TikTok account called Deep Tom Cruise. The author uploaded a series of Tom Cruise videos doing routine stuff. And by human eyes, it's very hard to pick on any traces that this Tom Cruise is actually fake. And the only information we can get is from the account profile name, Deep Tom Cruise, which means these videos are created by deepfake. So the second case is the fake personality. So in 2020, there was a teenager created a fake personality, Andrew Walls, on Twitter, and later on Twitter deemed it as a fake person. So this image profile is actually downloaded from this person does not exist.com. So all the profile images on this website are created by the Stelgan too. So a quote from a very prestigious professor from UC Berkeley in our area, he said, we found that not only are synthetic images are highly realistic, they're deemed more trustworthy than real faces. So the question here is, if these techniques are used for nefarious purpose, they can be very effective and pose a lot of threats. So therefore, we need to develop the set of tools to identify and authenticate the media contents. So research has shown that processing operations typically leave traces. Even though these traces are not perceptible to human eyes, they can be detected statistically by forensic techniques. So the two major applications are source identification, which is trying to identify the source where the images or videos come from. And the second is manipulation detection and the localization. So even though I listed them as a separate items here, but actually these two applications, the algorithm can be used pretty interchangeably. For example, if we're trying to detect manipulation detection, we can use source identification algorithm and then to identify like windows of the images. And if we saw a mismatch in the full size images on the patch based, and we can know that this image or videos is manipulated. So traditionally, researchers will like to build mathematical models and estimate forensic features, and then feed these features to machine learning algorithm and build classifier to identify camera models or do manipulation detection. However, the state of art techniques are majorly deep learning based. So the first example is they use the CNNs to learn high-level features directly from the training data. And these CNNs are often used for camera model identification and manipulation detection. And another different approach is using Siamese network. So different from CNNs, Siamese networks operates by comparing features in the subspace to find the mismatch in the patches to find manipulation. So in some scenarios, a malicious attacker may want to launch attack and make a forgery. It will be very easy for the attacker to modify contents because there's so many tools like Photoshop, GIMP, etc. But if it is for intelligence attacker who knows the existence of forensic algorithm, so the attacker may want to not only modify the content, but also trying to apply some algorithm to anti-forensically remove the traces left by the processing operation. So therefore, study anti-forensic is equivalently important. It helps the investigators to improve improve their forensic algorithm and developing new defense. So the two main goals of the anti-forensic attack is to falsify source information and remove forgery traces. So the goal of this thesis, we're trying to study popular anti-forensic attacks, and then we want to understanding the strength and the limitations of different attacks. Then we want to improve and propose more sophisticated anti-forensic attacks. And on top of that, we're trying to see if we can help improve the defenses against anti-forensic attack. So in the part one, we like to talk about the anti-forensic camera model falsification using generative adversarial networks. And the part two, we will discover some transferability issues with the GAN-based attacks on image forensic CNNs. And then we're trying to solve this transferability problems. The next part is our most recent contributions, which is we're trying to use our GAN-based attack to remove the AI-guided synthesized traces left by the AI guided synthesized techniques. And then we're trying to deploy our anti-forensic attacks in the wild. So in the end, we will extend our research from the digital domain to the physical domain, and then propose the defenses against the physical domain attacks on classifiers. So state-of-art forensic algorithm for camera model identifications are majorly based on CNNs to falsify capturing images capturing model from source A to target B. So a new tag usually use a generative adversarial network to build an anti-forensic generator. So the goal of this anti-forensic generator is trying to synthesize the forensic information in an image. So this has a lot of advantages. First, it will not change the content. And second, is only introduce a very minimal visual distortion. So a generative adversarial network, also known as GANs, is a deep learning network. It consists of a discriminator and a generator. So the goal of the discriminator is trying to differentiate it between fake images and real images, while the generator's goal is trying to produce a better quality image to best mimicking the distribution of the real images, such as to fool the discriminator. So by training a discriminator and the generator in iteratively fashion, so they will eventually reach equilibrium, and such that the generator can produce a very visually plausible images. So to utilize the GAN in the forensics purpose, and we make a few modifications. So the first architecture we propose is the MISO-GAN architecture. So we introduce a third component in the GAN framework, which is the camera model ID CNN. So this CNN is a pre-trained victim CNNs that the attacker trying to fool. It directly provides the forensic information to the generator and enforce the generator to synthesize forensic informations of the target camera model. So the first generator architecture we propose consists of 3 components. The first component is synthetic CFA. We use this to separate the directly captured pixels and interpolated pixels. Then after this module, the partially sampled layers will fit into 2 consecutive conv blocks. So the conv blocks is a series of conv layers formed in a certain pattern. So after 2 conv blocks, it will output a large volume of feature map. Therefore, we need to use a feature map reduction module to map the large feature maps to a 3-color layers image. So the goal of the generator not only to fool the camera model CNN, but also they need to maintain very high visual quality. Therefore, to train the generator, the laws consist of 3 terms. The first term is a perceptual laws. It is used to maintain the visual quality. And the second term is a classification laws. It is used to make sure the generator can fool the camera model CNNs. And the third term is adversarial laws. It is used to make sure the generator can fool the discriminator. And the alpha, beta, gamma are the weights for each loss term. The perceptual loss is calculated as the mean absolute difference between the input of to the generator and the output of the generator. The classification loss is calculated as a softmax cross entropy of the classifier's output of the generated image and the target class. So in equation 3, M is a number of the camera model. So T is the ideal softmax output. It's a 1-hot vector with a 1 at the location of the target class and a 0s elsewhere. Adversarial loss is calculated as a sigmoid cross entropy between the discriminator's output of the generated image and 1. So the first experiment we're trying to evaluate is we can fool the camera model ID CNN MISONet So MISONet is a well-known CNN architecture proposed to do camera model identification. So we conduct our experiments on two databases. The first is the Dresden database. It's a public available, widely used database for multimedia forensics. And then also we collect our own databases. So we used attack successful rate to capture how well our attack can fool the camera model ID SINs. And then we use the mean PSNR and the mean SSIM to measure the image quality of our generated image. So the baseline SIN classification accuracy before any attack has been launched has been pretty high for both databases. So this accuracy is consistent with the state-of-art performance on camera model identification. So the highlighted camera models in table 1 and 2 are the target camera models we're trying to target at. So in table 3, we can see that on both database, and we can very successfully fool camera model identification, targeting all of the target camera, and at the same time, we can maintain very high image quality. So here we give an example of our produced attacked image. So the first row are the real images, and the second row are attacked images produced by our generator. So the real images was originally captured by Canon EOS SL1, and we are trying to target it at iPhone 6s. So, and even as a zoomed view on the pixel-wise view, it's very hard for human eyes to tell the difference between the real images and the attacked images. And this is because the idea of our anti-forensic generators trying to synthesize the forensic traces instead of modifying the contents. So, so far we have talked about how to use the MISOGAN to fool camera model ID SIN. However, we also noticed that this attack requires a full access to the trained victim SINs. However, this is very unrealistic, because in real life, it's very hard for the defender or the investigator to give the full access to the attacker. Therefore, to make this attack work, so the attack need to be transferred. So what does it mean is they need to fool SINs that were not explicitly trained against. To better understand the transferability, we need to talk about several knowledge scenarios in the context of the anti-forensics area. So the performance of attacks usually depend on attack's knowledge about the victim SIN. So the first scenario is perfect knowledge scenario. It's also known as white box scenarios in like areas like computer vision and machine learning. So it means in this context, it means that the attacker has full access to the victim SIN. And if the attacker has a certain level of missing information, we categorize as limited knowledge scenario. So a very special and often talked about the limited knowledge scenario is a black box scenarios. So it means that the system is viewed as a black box. It allowed the attacker to query the system and observe the outputs. And the last scenario is the most challenging scenario, which is a zero knowledge scenario. So in this scenario, the attacker has zero knowledge about anything about the victim SIN. So we can see that the transferability issue is basically due to the discrepancies between the SINs used to train attack and the victim SIN that attacker trying to fool. The earlier research shows that anti-forensic attacks on image forensics SINs have difficulties in transferring. And we found that it cannot even transfer anecdotally across anecdotally same SINs. So to demonstrate this, we talk about like the three very commonly used class definitions for manipulation detection task. So the first class definition is binary decision. So it means it trains the CNNs to differentiate between the unaltered image and a manipulated image, and and it will make a manipulation detector. The second class definition is a multi-class decision. So it trains the CNNs to differentiate between unaltered images versus several individual manipulations. So if a manipulation consists of several parameters, then we group the entire of all the parameters associated with the single manipulation as one class. So this will give us manipulation classifier. So the last one is also a multi-class decision classifier. It trains to differentiate unaltered images versus several parameterized versions of individual manipulation. And this will give us manipulation parameterizer. And we will already notice that all of this class definition contains a class called the unaltered. And experimentally, we found that the true unaltered images can consistently be identified as unaltered under all class definitions. So the questions we want to ask here is, can anti-forensic detect the images for all forensic CNNs like the true unaltered images, which means can attacks transfer across class definitions? To demonstrate this, we formulated a very simple limited knowledge scenario. So we assume the attacker and the investigator has identical training data. And then we also assume that the attacker and the investigator will use the same CNN architecture. The only difference is the attacker has no information about what class definition the investigator will use. So theoretically, everything else is the same except the last layer of the output. Anecdotally, this should be the same. The attacker should be able to attain the same CNNs as a victim CNN. So first, we categorize the three class definition and pre-train our image forensic CNN. Then we launched a Mesonet attack on each CNN and create 3 sets of attacked images. Next, we first evaluate a white box attack, which means we use the CNN directly trained against to classify the corresponding set of attacked images and obtain the attack successful rate. And again, the attack successful rate is the percentage of the attacked images are classified as unaltered. And next, we also evaluate the near perfect knowledge scenario. So for each set of attacked images, we use the other 2 CNNs to classify them and obtain the attack successful rate. Then we can compare these 2 sets of obtained ASRs. So there's gonna be 2 possible outcomes. If the white box attack ASRs are very high, and but the near perfect knowledge attack ASRs is very low, which means the attack cannot transfer across the class definition. If both of them are very high, which means the attack can transfer across class definition. So the experiment was conducted using Dresden database. Again, it is a widely used public available database. And then we used the 3 editing operations. And for each editing operations, we chose the 5 parameters. They're all listed in table 4. And then together with the original images, we be able to train manipulation detectors, classifier, and parameterizers. So the baseline CNN classification accuracy before the attack being launched is pretty high, which means that they can be reliably detect the manipulations. And the perfect knowledge scenarios, we can see that all ASRs are pretty high. However, for the near perfect knowledge scenarios, all ASRs are under 0.3, which means even by only changing the class definition of a same sentence, it's very hard for the attack to transfer. So can we do a little bit better to improve the transferability of our GAN-based attack? So the approach we use here is we're trying to use a ensemble of surrogate sentence. Each surrogate sentence is trained to perform the same forensic task. So even though the surrogate sentence may not be able to produce exactly same boundary as the victim sentence, but if we vary CNN architectures and use a lot of sentence, so we believe that we can close up the boundaries of the unaltered image, such as the ensemble can enforce the generator to only produce generated examples within the boundaries. So we test our ideas on 3 different limited knowledge scenarios. The first limited scenarios will assume that the attacker and the investigators using a different training data. And the second limited knowledge scenarios, we additionally assume that attacker would not know all the parameters that the investigator used to train in their training data. And the third one is the most challenging one, is we not only assume that they're not using the training data, we also assume that the CNN models, the CNN architectures are different used by the attacker and the investigator. And the results shows that for all the limited knowledge scenarios, we can dramatically increase the transferabilities by introducing the ensemble of the surrogate sentence. So the AI guided synthesized technique has been very popular these days. So we see a content synthesized GANs, such as style GANs, can produce very visually plausible images. And many forensic algorithms has been proposed to be able to detect the traces left by a variety of GANs. So the challenges we want to ask ourselves is, can we remove these forensic traces left by the content synthesized GANs, use the knowledge that we obtained so far? To do this, we modified our generator in the MISO-GAN architecture. So first, we removed the synthetic CFA module. This is because the goal of this generator is trying to remove the forensic traces instead of falsifying the camera model information. And the second modification is we add a escape connection between the input images and the output of the generated image. This is to help to improve, prevent diminishing gradient. So to build, and then we build a ensemble of surrogate sentence, and each sentence is trained to differentiate real versus fake. And we used 8 sentence architecture. So several of them are proposed for forensic purpose, and several of them are for a stack analysis purpose, and several of them are for vision purpose. So we conducted our experiment on 2 databases. The first database is a human face database. It contains the GAN generated images produced by a variety of GANs. And then the real images in our human face database are collected from a public available database. The second is the object database. So this database is come from the forensics database. So this database, the training data contains pro-GAN generated images, and the real images are from LaSalle. And the testing set of the object data set are GAN generated images produced by a variety of GANs. So we test our attack in both white box scenario and a zero knowledge scenario. So the white box scenarios allowed us to train and test against the victim CNNs. And the zero knowledge scenarios, we assume that the attacker has to use the different training data. And also the attacker will not know the CNN architecture of the investigators use, and the attacker will completely miss the right CNN architecture. So in this case, the attacker has to build its own ensemble surrogate CNNs and fully account for the transferability of the attack. And to test this, we use the leave one out strategy. And the baseline classification accuracy on both database are pretty consistent, and which means before the attack, all of the CNNs can differentiate a real and a fake pretty confidently. In the white box scenarios, we can see after our attack, the attack success rate are consistently very high, which means that we can successfully fool all the CNNs with high confidence, and on the same time, we can also maintain very high visual quality. We also compare our modified anti-forensic generator to our old MISO-GAN generator. And we see that it outperformed the MISO-GAN generator in terms of both attack successful rate and image quality. So the fact that holds true for the object database as well. So under the zero knowledge scenarios, we see that our attack seems have a little problems fooling the ResNet and the MISONet to some extent, but generally it can still achieve pretty high attack successful rate on majority of the CNNs, and as well as maintain high visual quality. And it means that even in the zero knowledge scenarios, our attacks still be able to transfer. And this fact also holds true for the object data sets. So here we, in figure 7 and 8, we show the samples that produced by our attack, both on the object database and the human database. So the first row of the two figures are all GAN generated, which means it's directly output by the GANs, the content synthesized GANs. And then the second row is attacked images produced by our attack. So if we look very closely, it's very hard for human eyes to pick up the difference between the original version and our attacked version. So far, we only talk about the experiment we conducted in a lab environment. The next question is, we are trying to see how we can deploy our attack in the wild, in the real world. Can we do it? Can we still do it successfully? So there's a lot of difference between academic literature and the real world cases. So the majority of the academic study of anti-forensic areas are focusing on developing white box attack, and then with increasing amount of interest in developing black box attack and zero knowledge attack. However, in the real world is completely different story. The white box attack is very unrealistic. As we said, it's impossible for the investigator and the detector to make its system public to the attacker. And the majority of, many of the online public available system, we can view it as a black box system, such as it allows the users to give an input to a system and observe the output. And the more of the system are considered as a zero knowledge scenario, especially those systems used by the defense industry. Another point is in the academic study of the black box attack, it's often assumed that attacker can have unlimited queries of a black box system. Usually is on the order of hundreds of thousands and above. And additionally, the attacker also is assumed to be able to directly obtain the neuron activations. And therefore, they can use the neuron activations to train a substitute network and launch a black box attack. However, in the real world, it's impossible for an attacker to have so many queries without being caught by somebody. And additionally, usually the result of the black box system is encapsulated in a form of confidence score or like a log likelihood ratios. So to the best of our knowledge, there's no previous attacks has. Oh, somebody have questions?
I think you can keep going, Xinwei. I don't see a question.
Oh. So to the best of our knowledge, there's no previous attacks has been evaluated in the wild. So therefore, we want to design and conduct experiments to best mimic in the real world cases. So this work is a part of work we did under the DARPA Semaphore program. So in this experiment, we want to know first how forensic detectors can perform under different knowledge level when a new attacks emerges. And the second question is if the investigator can gather more information as time goes on, if they can improve their defense using robust training. So we designed our experiments to best capturing the evolving relationship between the attacker and the investigator. So in the initial response, we assume there's a new attack emerges. So the attacker knows the existence of a detector, but the attacker has no idea about this detector. So in this case, the attacker can only make zero knowledge attack and merely accounts for the transferability of the attack. The second phase is when the attacker, as time goes on, maybe the attacker has some ability to probe the system, which means they have a certain level of observations of the input and output relationship of the system. So to mimic this case, we made a probe database ourselves and distributed it to all investigation teams. Then we asked them to run through their system and return to us the results in the form of log likelihood ratios. So the next phase is as time goes on, maybe the investigator will be eventually identify and collect some examples of the new attack. Therefore, they can use this new data to robust training their detectors and improve their defense. So we used two sets of anti-forensic attacks. So the first set is adversarial example attacks. So adversarial example attacks operates by adding fabricated perturbations to original images and then trying to push the attacked images across the boundary to the target class. And we use the three most popular adversarial example attacks, which is a fast gradient sign method, project gradient descent, and a Carlini-Wagner attack. And for another set is our GAN-based attack. So this is the new attack that we developed ourselves. So we use the baseline classification accuracy to evaluate the performance of the detector before any attack being launched, and use the attack success rate to evaluate how successful our attacks can fool the detector. And then we also draw the ROC curves and obtain the associated statistics, especially the probability of the detection at low false alarm rate, which is the most interested by the investigation teams. So due to the sensitivity of the time limitation, and we only present like a few results that we collected. So for the three teams that we present here, we can see that the baseline evaluation are pretty good in terms of all three metrics, and especially the probability and detection and low false alarm rate is very high as well. And first, after our zero knowledge attack, we can see that our attack can successfully fool like all three teams with 0.84 attack successful rate. And compare with adversarial example attacks, we significantly outperform all of them. And if we're looking at the ROC curves, so the green lines are indicated our attack, and the purple lines are the PGD attack. And then the orange line is the baseline evaluation. And we can see that even for the kitware, the system used by kitware, which seems to be the most robust to our attack, at low false alarm rate areas, we can still be able to dramatically decrease the performance of the detector by almost 50%. Oh, and then the next best performance is a PGD attack. However, we need to point out that the PGD attack is operated in a much more rigorous fashion than our attack. Therefore, they will leave a visually visible distortion, and also because every time you launch attack, you need to train on the specific images, versus our attack, we only need to train it once and then deploy it on any images. So our attack is much faster than a PGD. So after we collect more information using the probe database, and we can further improve the performance of our attack. And in this case, according to the ROC curve, we can see we basically sabotaged all teams' detectors. However, the adversarial example attacks, they didn't improve much compared to even with more information. So after the defender collected more, we're giving the data of our attack examples, they can robust training their detectors. And we can see after robust training, all the team can successfully defend the attack. So in conclusion, we see that our GAN attack outperforms all adversarial example attack. And the adversarial example attack has some difficulties in fooling forensic detector in both zero knowledge and the black box scenarios. However, our GAN-based attack can achieve acceptable attack success rate even in the zero knowledge scenario at a low false alarm rate. The last point is robust training can immediately improve the defense of the against the attack. So far, we only all the attacks we've been talking about are all digital domain. So in the recent years, a physical domain attack has dramatically attracted a lot of attentions. So in figure 9, we show attacked US traffic signs, which is attacked by camouflage art attack. So this attack by adding white and black stickers to a stop sign, it can make CNNs classify it as a speed limit 45. Research has shown that digital domain defenses would not be able to apply to the physical domain attacks. So the majority of the existing defenses utilize a tension-based model, such as GradCam. So this tension-based model defense only effective when the attacks are trying to grab attentions of CNNs, such as adversarial patch attack. However, it will not work on the attack like a camouflage art attack. This is because this attack is not trying to grab attention of the CNN, instead of trying to divert the CNN's attention. So to be able to demonstrate to implement the to conduct our experiment, we want to we want to propose a new defense to protect against the camouflage art attack. And we want our defense to be effective at a different knowledge level. So to do this, we need to make, we made a new database which consists of the 90 physically attacked traffic signs, and experiment results shows that our defense outperform other state-of-art defenses. So the camouflage art attack can be modeled as putting perturbations according to a perturbation mask. So the zeros indicate areas that remain unaltered, and the ones indicated areas that should be add perturbation on. So depending on the defender's knowledge of attack, there's several ways that we can obtain the defensive mask. If it's a non-blind scenario, which is the perfect scenario, then the defender already know where the perturbations are. Therefore, they can directly use the perturbation mask. If in a semi-blind scenario, which means that the defender has no ideas if the image has been attacked or not, and the defender does not know which area has been perturbed. However, if the defender knows about the attack method, the defender can in advance implement the attack method and obtain a pair defensive mask between the source and any source and target in the database. And this will give the defender a set of a candidate defensive mask. And in a blind scenario, which is a zero knowledge scenario, and the defender has no knowledge, therefore we can randomly generated defensive mask to create a candidate defensive mask. So our defense consists of 3 steps. The first is finding the areas to defend, which is we need to identify defensive mask, and we can use what we just talk about under each knowledge scenario. And then after we find the areas to defend, we can apply local defense according to the defensive mask. In this way, we can either use some remapping functions trying to remove the perturbation area, or we can use reconstruct algorithm trying to mitigate the effectiveness of the perturbation. And after the local defense, it will give us either a sequence of a defended image or parallel set of defended images. Then we can use the fusion strategies to fuse all the decisions of the defended image and output a final result. So to conduct the experiment, we create a new database using the camouflage art attack. We put white and black stickers on the 6 source signs that we bought, and we targeted at the 15 target, and that gives us like 19 pairs. Then we take photos of the physically attacked signs. This is how we made our database. So the defense rate is, to evaluate our defense, the defense rate is the probability of the attacked images can be correctly classified as its true source after the defense. And the classification drop measure the probability of the unattacked images being misclassified after the offense being after the defense being applied. And the post-defense accuracy is the probability of any image correctly classified as true source after the defense being applied. So in a non-blind scenarios, we can see that our defense is have achieved a pretty high defense rate and a post-defense accuracy, and without no classification drop. And the more interesting is when we're looking at the semi-blind scenarios, when we have no idea if the image has been attacked or not, or we have no, and also we have no idea about where the perturbed areas is. We can still be able to defend the system by 0.7 defense rate and 0.85 post-defense accuracy. And at the same time that we noticed that the classification drop is 0, which means we didn't misclassify any unattacked image. So compare with the state-of-art defense using the digital watermarking. This is based on the attention-based model defense. We dramatically outperform the digital watermarking defense. And in the blind scenarios, we can see that even though our performance, our defense doesn't perform as good as a semi-blind scenario, because we have zero knowledge about either the attack or the sign. However, in this area, we'll still be outperform the digital watermarking defense, as well as we also maintain pretty low classification drop. So to summarize, in this defense, we focus on the adversarial attacks, predominantly on the context of multimedia forensics. So next, we show how we can use the GANs to falsify camera model information anti-forensically. Then we discover the transferability issues of the GAN attacks. And then we propose effective methods to improve the transferability of the attack. And next, we also use our GAN-based attack and trying to fool the forensic scene as trained for detecting the AI synthesized content. We demonstrate the effectiveness of our attack in a realistic environment. And in the end, we extended our research to the physical domain and provide effective methods to defend against the physical domain attack on classifier. So here's some publications related to the work that I did during my PhD areas, my PhD period. And there's some work that I didn't cover in this talk is because the time limitation. However, if you're interested, you can find it in my defense thesis. And if I can have several more minutes, I'd like to do acknowledgement. So I am very glad that I finally come to this point. I have a lot of people I want to acknowledge. So the first is I really are grateful for my committee members and my advisors and my family and friends. So I collaborated with a lot of the faculty, like my committee members, like Dr. Shackelford and Dr. Connie Sami. We've been working on the same project multiple times, and I really learned a lot from you. And when I first came to Drexel many years ago, the first lecture I learned is from Dr. Walsh. And after that, for two consecutive years, I've been taking unstopped lectures from Dr. Walsh. I really learned a lot from you. And also Dr. Walsh helped me to write my reference letters to apply for my PhD program. Was really grateful for that. And also is for my advisor, Dr. Stam. Like, he always gave me like unconditional support and the endless care, and helped me to go through presentations over and over for so many years. I really learned a lot. And also because of Drexel, because of Missile, I also be able to meet the love of my life, Leland. Right? And the Leland really brings me the joy of my life, and also gave me family in US. Like, my mother-in-law really cares about me, and I have a wonderful family now in US. So I'm very grateful for everybody. So in the end, so in the memory of my grandfather, who unfortunately passed away due to the cancer when I was preparing for my defense. So I want to thank everybody for to bear with me, and 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 come here to listen to my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xinwei.
Let's give Xinwei a round of applause, everyone. Wonderful.
Yay!
Really. Congratulations. Okay. Very interesting talk. So I would imagine, of course, you have a lot of support in the audience, but there also might be people who want to ask you a question about some part of your work. And it'd be nice to give them a couple of seconds if they'd like to. Anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question before they leave for the final part of the exam?
I know members of my lab have asked Xinwei many questions about this work.
I'm just waiting for a moment because there's still things coming in on the chat, but I think maybe that sounds like, well, it's a great talk. All right, so yes, and that's of course the position that we're all in right now, Karen. So we're going to ask her some questions. That's what we need to do. Thank you so much for coming. I hope Xinwei has a way to get in touch with you all afterwards to celebrate. Usually that's an important thing to do as well. But I think we'll go ahead and ask everybody that's not the committee to step off, if that is okay. I think we should probably do that.